Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Saturday night, the 30th of March 2019, and it is Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld, where we drop the news and pricing of the Dow Jones and the cryptocurrencies and economics, and we take up a silver topic. And tonight's topic is one we get a lot of questions on, which is, are they going to confiscate my silver? Well, welcome, Smaulgld Mug Stackers and Game Changers. Good to have you with us tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking exclusively about the issue of confiscation. I get questions about this all the time. And we're going to go through why in the past precious metals have been confiscated. And then we're going to analyze that and compare it to what might happen in the future. Now, the past is often instructive as to the future, but doesn't mean because something happened in the past, it will happen in the future, or just because it didn't happen in the past, it won't happen in the future. So let me begin by saying, first off, the government can do whatever it wants in certain circumstances. There is no guarantees at all that a government or your government would ever not hesitate to confiscate property. If, for example, in the United States, we went to a communist type government, they would just seize all private property. If you went to some type of hybrid of that, they could say over a certain amount, we're going to seize that. We already have the idea of a wealth tax being bandied about. Elizabeth Warren is talking about a wealth tax on amounts, certainly amounts over what she has, but amounts like, let's say, $50 million. So if you had a $50 million net worth and part of that was in silver, well, then you'd have, your silver would be taxed, which would mean, in a sense, that portion of it doesn't belong to you because you have to pay to own it. But let's assume that we don't have a government that is going to be overhanded and take your property. And we're not ruling that out for purposes of tonight's discussion. We're not going to discuss that, because once you're in that situation, then they'll take everything. We're going to look at a situation, or a reasonable situation, hopefully, where we're carrying on as we are now, and the government is not in the business of taking your property, not in the business of confiscating guns, confiscating property. I'm not saying it can't happen, because I think, and you'll see when we go through the example, the only way the government's going to take your silver is if they're taking everything else. I don't see, and I'll explain why, and then we'll get your comments, why the government would single out silver except for two reasons. And I think those two reasons are remote. So again, the only reason they would take your silver is because the government went into the business of taking everything. Confiscating property, conscripting you or your, doesn't even have to be male members of your family, could be anyone. But that's not what we're talking. We're talking about, in the current situation, I can see no reason why they would come and try to take your silver. Someone just mentioned, why would they bother at this price? That's a good point too. But there are reasons why they might wish to do that. But we're also going to go through, there are many places where if the government wanted or needed silver, they can get it without coming for your silver shield coins or your silver shield rounds. There's plenty more silver in silver stockpiles, and we're going to talk about that. But first, a lot of people are saying, yes, but they did take the gold back in 1933, presidential executive order, and they did take the silver, less people know about that, in 1934. So we're going to go through a brief history of those confiscations, but then we're going to explain why those confiscations were completely different to what we're talking about today. And you'll see as we go through. Now, in 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued an executive order, 6102, and under that order, you had to turn in the gold that you had, including gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates. And what was the purpose of this? Roosevelt was not taking the gold because it was game over and they didn't want you to be able to protect yourself and there was hyperinflation. Indeed, it was the reverse. They were having deflation. The Great Depression was on in full swing, 1933. The executive order was signed April 5th, coming up on the anniversary, 1933. So what Roosevelt was doing, while it was heavy-handed and it was a confiscation of property, there's a couple of things about it that make it not what you think it was. First of all, you did get paid for your gold. But that's not the main reason they took the gold. They weren't taking the gold because they wanted to take gold from people or they wanted to take wealth from people. What they were trying to do was demonetize gold. And the reason they wanted to do that was if they got it out of the hands of the people. Remember, you had to turn in gold coins. So in a sense, let's say today they wanted you to turn in $1 bills and you turned them in and you got a dollar coin, or the reverse. Let's say you had to return in your dollar coins. They do make those. No one uses them. And instead you bring them to the bank and they give you a dollar bill. That's essentially what happened with your gold. You brought in the $20 gold piece, the $5 gold piece, the double eagle, the single eagle, the $10 gold eagle, and they gave you the then price of $20.67. So in that sense, it wasn't a taking, it was a confiscation with compensation. It was a confiscation with compensation at the price. Now, why are they taking the gold out of circulation? This is not the same as we'll see with the silver confiscation. What they were doing was taking the gold out of circulation and giving you the value of it. And the reason they were doing that was they wanted to create inflation. So what they did after they took the gold from the people, in 1934, by an act of Congress, after they had accumulated as much of the gold as they could, bought up a lot of gold from the mines, they then, in January 1934, passed the Gold Reserve Act. And that changed the price of gold from $20.67 an ounce to $35 an ounce. And that gave the government a nice gain on their confiscated gold. But more importantly, it led to a 41% decrease in the purchasing power of the dollar. This is how they were trying to create inflation, by removing the gold specie from circulation. Now, all of that gold then got melted down, and they started building Fort Knox as well as a bunch of other projects, government-sponsored, like the Hoover Dam and things like that, to make people supposedly to put them back to work. They also, as part of trying to create inflation, the central planners love this, they had farmers burn crops to create shortages so the prices go higher. All kinds of idiocy that was going on. And here they were trying to create inflation because there was a deflation. So while people are half starving to death, Roosevelt is ordering pigs and corn and wheat to be destroyed to create inflation. So you got what's going on here. They're not after your gold. They're after the value, not of gold. They're using it to create this mythical inflation by now revaluing the dollar versus gold. Gold goes higher to $35, set by an act of Congress in 1934. That's supposedly supposed to help. Now, just an aside here, that $35 an ounce price that was fixed by Congress in 1934 stuck all the way through the 50s, 60s, 70s, until Nixon pulled us off the gold standard in 1971, and that's when gold finally started to take off. They thought that the price of gold would go down after Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard, because they thought, well, that eliminates a monetary demand for gold, and from now on, only people would buy it for trinkets and jewelry. Well, wrong they were, because central banks decided they were going to continue to hold on to it, and people at the time in the 70s viewed gold as a solid monetary asset, and they went out and purchased it, so there was an actual increase in demand for gold. Now think this one through. This is why I don't like a gold standard. Under a gold standard, they kind of have to fix the price of gold, and you can't protect yourself against government reckless policy because the price is fixed, so you can't buy gold. So that's why the Hunt brothers bought silver. That's an aside. Now back to gold. So we know why now the government took the gold. It wasn't, we're going to get those gold bugs. We're going to get those people who are hoarding gold. There were some that were, and they had lists of people who had COMEX contracts or whatever they were. I don't know if they were called futures contracts, who were entitled to receive gold, and they made sure that they turned that gold in as well. But the point is, they weren't after gold specific. Well, they were after gold specifically, but not because people had it, but because it was circulating. They basically were asking people to turn in the money because they wanted to have new money. And the new money they wanted to revalue 41% lower, and that's why they took the gold. So keep that in mind. They took the gold in order to create inflation because they wanted the gold out of the monetary system so they could, as a circulating currency, so they can boost up the value of gold versus the dollar and thereby create inflation. So a lot of the mindless things they did, like that move and destroying cattle and pigs and corn and wheat, was all designed to create inflation. That was the mentality. They had to create inflation. So the gold was taken out of the system because they didn't want it in the monetary system. Then in 1934, Roosevelt signed another executive order, 6814, and you had to turn your silver in that was situated in the United States, any silver that was 80% fine or more. And if you had more than 500 ounces. Now, they didn't have monster boxes back then. But if somehow you had a little store of gold, you had to turn that in. And you didn't have to turn in gold that was less than 80% fine. Things that you had, things they say you had in good faith for specific and customary use that you're not holding for their silver bullion value. I guess that's like silver ornaments, jewelry, silverware. As long as they're under 500 troy ounces, they didn't care. Now, the reason they wanted this silver, again, wasn't to take silver from you. They weren't specifying that we got to get those silver hoarders, because there really weren't many silver hoarders. And here's the reason why. There was no trouble getting silver in 1933, 1934. The U.S. was mining tons of it. They had still the Comstock lode in the late 19th century. Nevada was still churning out a lot of silver. But there was an issue. There were silver coins. You can get silver coins, and you can hold on to silver coins. But they didn't ask you to turn in your silver coins, unlike when they asked you to turn in the gold coins. So there's a big difference here. In 1934, the mindset was, and there was no thought given that I've ever read about in the 30s, that we've got to get the silver out of the coins. That didn't happen globally until the 60s, when there became a greater use for silver as an industrial metal. In the 30s, silver was viewed as something that you made coins out of. I was just looking tonight at some lectures on the Vikings. They got paid their ransom in the 11th century, the 10th century, in silver coins. Silver has always been a medium of exchange, a ransom, a money that people want, they can recognize. And in the 30s, the idea was you needed silver coins. But in the 30s, what happened, the reason they wanted to take the silver from you was not because they wanted to demonetize silver, it was because they, through a series of dealings that we'll touch on briefly tonight, and I'll leave you a link for some more background, the U.S. found itself with not enough silver to mint coins. And so the reason they wanted the silver was they wanted you to give it to them so they can mint it into coins. That wasn't quite a free silver concept, but it was a concept where the government needed to go on and get some silver. Not only did they ask all the citizens to turn their non-coin silver in, or they didn't even ask, you didn't have to turn in if you had Canadian silver or British silver. They didn't want any of that. They just wanted your bulk silver. But even that wasn't enough, because the government also then went on a massive silver purchase spree pursuant to the Silver Purchase Act of 1934. So they confiscated about 113 million ounces from the people and paid them the then going price. I think it was about $1.29. But they collected that amount and then started making coins again. And then they, in addition to the 112 million ounces, or 13 million ounces that they got from the people, they went and purchased about 1.3 billion ounces of silver. And they did that around the world. Now, why were they doing this again? Because prior to the 30s, they had agreed in 1878, pursuant to the Bland-Allison Act, to kind of appease the losers. And when they demonetized silver in 1873 and took the U.S. off the bimetallic standard, they agreed as a consolation prize that they would continue to make silver dollars. So they reinstituted making silver dollars. It wasn't quite free silver, but they made a lot of them from 1878 to 1918. Hundreds of millions of them. And it was an appeasement for also the silver state of Nevada. Senator Pittman was out. Well, that wasn't why. Pittman wasn't around in 1878, but he was around in 1918 when they passed the Pittman Act, and he was around in 1934 when they did this. So Nevada was always pushing to have more gold purchased by the government, and they worked out these sweetheart deals. The reason there was a shortage of silver in the 30s wasn't because of the Great Depression. It was because of a prior deal they did in 1918. Under the Pittman Act, it's kind of a, I don't know if it was an insider deal, but it seems to have been. The United States agreed with Great Britain to send them a bunch of silver because India was having a silver shortage because all coins at the time were made in silver, and they needed silver to mint silver rupees, and they didn't have enough. So the U.S. said, fine, we'll send some to you right away. So what they did was they just melted down like half of the supply of the Morgan silver dollars that were around at the time, got England to agree to pay above market price for them, shipped that silver out to England, and then under the Pittman Act, they had to agree to, from 1918 on, it actually started around 1921, they started making the Morgan silver dollars, and they made them then the peace silver dollars. They'd agreed to replace all of the silver dollars they had melted down. Well, that was a big boon for the Nevada state because now they had to go into overdrive to mint new silver dollars, and they changed the silver dollar from the Morgan dollar to the peace dollar, and they went into overdrive minting up silver dollars. Now, I have some charts. You can see them on the, I won't share them with you tonight. I don't have them up on the screen. But the amount of silver that they used to make silver dollars in 1921 was enormous. They minted 87 million Morgan and Peace silver dollars. They used 67 million ounces to meet that demand for Morgan and Peace dollars. However, even though the mints were in overdrive, well, not the mints, the mines were in overdrive in Nevada, supplying the U.S. Mint with all that silver to really replace all those silver dollars, which really weren't the most used coins. They weren't mining enough to allow for the mintage of quarters and dimes. So in 1921, they minted 87 million Morgan and Peace silver dollars, used up 67.8 million ounces, but they only made 1 million half dollars, 1.9 million quarters, and only 12 million dimes. So they only used 362,000 ounces to make half dollars of silver, 346,000 ounces to mint quarters, and 890,000 ounces to mint dimes, which meant over 95% of the silver that was being used at the mint was going into the mintage of silver dollars. Well, it wasn't just 1921 when that happened. In 1922, same thing happened. They minted 66.8 million peace dollars. they used 51.6 million ounces of silver in 1922 to mint silver dollars. Can anyone guess how much silver went to the making of half dollars, quarters, and dimes in 1922? I'll give you some of a bit of a direction. They used 362,000 ounces to mint half dollars in 1921, 346,000 ounces in 1921 to mint quarters, and 890,000 ounces of silver to mint dimes in 1921. How much silver do you think they used in 1922 to mint half dollars, quarters, and dimes in 1922? I'll just quickly go over to the comments and see if anyone has an idea. And where's Barry has the correct answer? Little to none. In fact, no silver was used to mint quarters, dimes, and half dollars in 1922. So if anyone tries to sell you a 1922 Liberty Walking half dollars, it is a fake. If anyone tries to sell you a 1922 Standing Liberty quarter, it is a fake. If anyone tries to sell you a 1922 very rare Mercury dime, most likely it is a fake. So you see what happened in 1921? 67 million ounces went to making Morgan and Peace dollars. In 1922, 51.6 million ounces of silver went to making peace dollars, and no silver went into the minting of quarters, dimes, and half dollars. 1923, you get the picture. What's happening? Same thing, not quite the same thing. They minted 56 million peace dollars, a very small amount of half dollars, just 2.1 half dollars, using up 787,000 ounces of silver. They made a modest amount of quarters, just 11 million, and then Mercury dimes, a little bit more, 56 million. But again, they're using 43.8 million ounces of silver to make peace dollars, and they're only using 787,000 ounces to make half dollars. They're using 2 million ounces to make quarters and 4 million ounces to make dimes. This goes on for a while. And that's why anyone who collects junk silver, you'll notice that coins of this date are not only rare, but if you do get them, like 1917, 1918, they're worn out. And the reason they're worn out was because there weren't that many of them, so they had to circulate. And they did not in future years make hardly any at all. So they were using the same dimes, quarters, and half dollars for 20 years. Now, normally what would happen is some of them would leave. There was too much circulation and too few coins. And that's why in 1934, they needed to make more coins. And they realized that while they had made it seems to be a big mess up, they managed to get enough silver to replace the coins that they sold in 1918 under the Pittman Act, those silver dollars, but they didn't quite get enough silver to mint and replace in the due course, the normal course, quarters, dimes, and half dollars. Well, 1934 changed all that. They collected that silver under the Confiscation Act from Americans, and then they also went out and purchased boatloads of silver. Okay. Now you can see, let's distinguish 1933 confiscation of gold and 1934 confiscation of gold. They have one thing in common, but there's one distinction. In 1934, they took the gold because they wanted to take the gold out of circulation. They didn't want to necessarily take your value. They wanted to create inflation, and they wanted to remove gold coins from circulation as a currency. 1934, they wanted to add back. The reason they confiscated silver is they wanted to collect it to put it back into silver coins. So two exact opposite reasons. They wanted the gold out of the system in 1933, and in 1934, they want the silver back into the system. They needed silver to mint dimes, quarters, and half dollars. And by the way, when they finally met their obligation to mint back all of those silver dollars under the Pittman Act of 1918, which they started in 1921 again, by 1935, they minted their last one under that, and then they never made them again. Okay, so now you can see one reason why the government confiscated silver and gold. Different reasons, but one common reason was money. Gold and silver were money, period, as they would say. and they had different reasons to get the gold and the silver. Gold they took to take it out of the system, silver they took to put it into the system. And in both cases, it was because of some monetary shenanigans in the case of gold that they wanted to accomplish, which is inflation. Silver, it was they had screwed up with their other shenanigans by melting down the domestic supply of silver under a deal with Nevada, Senator Pittman, to ship that silver to England to make a profit and then to give work to the Nevada mine so they can replace all of those Morgan silver dollars, which they did a good job of doing, but they didn't have enough silver to make quarters, dimes, and half dollars. Now, they never came up with the bright idea like they had in the 60s. Well, to heck with it. We'll just make the dimes, quarters, and half dollars the way we make nickels. 75% copper, 25% nickel, done. We don't have to worry about it. But back then, not only was that unthinkable because money was silver in larger amounts once you got past the 5 cents and pennies, but also because they wanted the mines. There was a very big lobby. You still had the silver Democrats. They lost, but there was still a very important element in the Democratic Party that supported free silver, and you had the mining interest out west that supported that. Okay, so the number one reason that a government would ever take your gold and silver is monetary. Because outside of monetary, you might as well just be worried about them coming to take your mattress, your desk, your chair, just because they want to take your stuff. The reason they took the gold, again, wasn't because they had some animus towards stackers and preppers who were worried about hyperinflation. Remember, there was no hyperinflation. It was a deflationary time. They took it to take the gold out of the system so they can revalue the dollar. And they took the silver actually to give it back to you in the form of coins because all the coins you were using were worn out. I'm not saying they were being benevolent and acting in your favor. They were covering a mistake that they made, but they weren't trying to take silver from you. And again, back then, people were not stacking silver. Silver was plentiful. And again, it's totally different than what they did with gold. They didn't ask you to turn in all your silver coins. They did ask you to turn in your gold coins. They asked you to turn in your junk silver, your 80% plus silver that you might have. And who would have it lying around? People didn't buy bars of silver to stack in the 1930s. If you wanted to, quote, stack silver back then, you were free to your heart's content to take all of the coins, all those worn out coins you wanted, and stack them in your house. And there was no legislation against that. You could have every bit of change you wanted in the 30s, you could have taken and stored it, and you could have stacked silver that way. That wasn't the reason they took the silver. So it was totally different than the reason they took the gold. So that's the number one reason that gold and silver were confiscated. It was about money. It was about trying to mess around with the financial system. Now today, the only reason, all things considered equal, is it would have to be about the monetary system. Well, my opinion on this is government is not interested in reinstituting anything resembling adding gold or silver back into the monetary system. But I'll indulge the fantasy. If somehow the government was interested, and I just don't see it happening, but let's say they were under enormous pressure under some stacker political action committee, and they had to do it. Well, the first thing they would do is most of the gold and silver is held in larger stockpiles. Going door to door and asking people for their gold and silver, there's just not that much. And you can get people to volunteer. You could just ask for it, and they'll sell it to them. But we have silver stockpiles. We have mines. United States could essentially nationalize a mine. Now they did try to do that in the 50s, and the Supreme Court struck down Truman. Not a silver mine, it was a steel mill. But if they wanted to be heavy-handed and they wanted to get their most bang for their buck with the least amount of unrest, and it's very expensive to try to get. I mean, this is the whole foolish J.P. Morgan has all the silver, then melt down every little piece of silver. It's a lot easier just to confiscate a mine, or to go after the wherever the situses are of silver ETFs, things of that nature. So they would only do it if somehow silver is going to become part of the monetary system. And as I say, that is so remote that they would need to do that, or they'd even want to do that. Less remote is maybe they might want to do that with gold. But again, people don't realize the United States does mine significant amounts of gold and silver. And they also say, well, there's no gold at Fort Knox. That's probably not true either. If it's important for the United States to have gold or silver, they can easily buy it. They can easily stack it. And by the way, if somehow there's some people who believe there's gold in Fort Knox, but the United States doesn't own it, yeah, try that one. When the United States actually needed it, whatever claims the fantasy is that are on that gold would immediately go away, and they would tell, nope, that's the gold. So I don't see, for any monetary reason, the United States ever wanting to take your gold or silver. And if they did want to, I think they can find other ways and larger and quicker ways to get gold or silver. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the government won't come and take your stuff. They can have other reasons to come and take it, but specifically for them to want gold and silver would have to be part of something that they wanted to do something with the money. Now, the other reason they might want to take your silver, but probably not your gold, but maybe, is for some national defense or some national project. So let's say the United States had a need where either the weaponry system required vast amounts more of silver or gold than we have today, or there was some type of new Green Deal where they had to produce X number of solar panels to this specific specification, and it required this amount of silver. Yeah, in that case, then specifically from a commodity standpoint, not from a monetary one, they may say we need to have this these commodities turned in. That's far more likely. All right. There we go. We're back. Sorry about that. So what I was saying was that it's far more likely that the government would have a need to take gold or silver for a commodity purpose rather than a monetary reason. Those things could happen, but again, they could also want your copper, your steel, your nickel, your car. So it's not specific to silver, and certainly gold is probably never going to be required in such, unless it's like a worldwide cure for cancer or something, and usually that would be nanoparticles. It's probably not going to be required in vast amounts that will require confiscation. Now, the other things that could happen, as I mentioned, is the things that are more troubling are things like wealth taxes. So you know how companies list all their assets and they sometimes pay tax on inventory. You know, the idea of the sovereign individual, well, if a government would recognize that, then they might say, well, then disclose all of your assets as your sovereign state is, and so we can recognize it and tax you in order to recognize your sovereign status. So that's something else. And the other third possible, so the one reason is they would do it for money or monetary reasons. I don't see that happening at all. Second is they could do it for national defense or a national project. That's far more likely than they would do it for money. These people, the way they think, I don't think they think anything about monetary. Third reason, obviously, is they do it just because they want to do it, because they've become a government that decides you don't deserve, you don't own that, that's not yours. So it would be anything of value. It wouldn't just be gold and silver. You wouldn't own your mugs. They would say you got to turn your mugs in too. The idea that they're specifically coming for your gold and silver, I don't know. I don't think that that's, because it happened in the past, I don't think that that's a real concern. The concern is that the government will take anything of yours, will tax anything of yours, wealth tax, income tax, windfall profits tax if the price goes higher. But I don't think they're in the game of wanting to take specifically gold or silver unless they have a specific need for it, which I don't think they'll have. And if there is going to be a specific need, it's far more likely for it to be a commodity need, a national emergency need, a national project need, a national defense need, than it is for a monetary need. All right, let's see what you guys are thinking. All the game changers and mug stackers. Fiona's asking if anyone's here. Yes, we've got quite a crowd here. De La Villa says Lance is here. Sorry, I got cut off again, but De La Villa says you're never alone if you own a mug. Yep. Okay, Seth's saying they're not getting my silver. This is a common one, with keyboard warriors. They'll have to come and take it. I guarantee you, if they were going to come and take it, they would come with a SWAT team, and you couldn't do anything about it. But they're not going to do that. It's not worth the time. The only reason they would ever SWAT team anybody to take silver is because that person is a target for another reason. They're not going to SWAT team to come take someone's monster box. So I just think that there's no reason for them to take anything like that. The amounts that they would get would not be significant. They would get voluntary compliance in many. In fact, I know a lot of people probably would be happy if the government said, turn your silver in for $20. We need to put in the solar panels. Let me ask a quick poll. How many people would turn their silver in tomorrow voluntarily if it was $20 an ounce and the government said, we're going to make a bunch of solar panels and we need your silver? Who on this chat would turn in their silver for $20 tomorrow, no questions asked, from the government? I'm going to ask that question in the poll and see what you say. I would think you'd have to be a moron not to turn your silver in for $20. So and remember, the United States can fiat all they want. They can print up the money and it won't have any impact on inflation because the amount of silver that they'd have to buy at $20 an ounce wouldn't be that much. It's like a day's worth of QE or something. Ann's getting greedy. No, it's got to be $25 an ounce. Well, you'd miss the $20 and that would probably be the end of it. All right, let's see what else we have in the comments here. Seth is here. It's happy Saturday. J'ai vu acheter une tasse. Okay, Fiona speaking French there. Where's Barry? Hi, Lewis. Well, this Basel III hype. Could it be possible used in reverse for creditors to seek our gold for payments of debt? Don't know what you mean by that. Could it possibly be used in reverse for creditors to seek our gold for payments of debt? You'll have to explain that one. He didn't already answer my question, did he? Nope, I didn't. I can never get here on time these days. Well, you can ask the question again because I didn't understand it, and I will stay and see if you want to ask it again. Fiona, fine jewelry of this period, very beautiful at bargain prices. Yes, indeed. Silver stacker for life. What, they're coming for my silver? Yeah, he's joking, of course. Coins AZ is here. Bonsai Treehouse. Yeah, with that nonsense story about JP Morgan's got all the silver. First of all, that story is so far-fetched. Imagine, first of all, if silver is so rare, and if JP Morgan actually had 800 million ounces of silver, you would think thered be a silver shortage. There's not. You can buy silver all day, every day at $16, $17 an ounce. The other reason is, why, if JP Morgan wanted to buy silver, they wouldn't buy little coins and then melt them down. Well, it doesn't make a stitch of sense. But that story's out there. The JP Morgan hoax. Seth is going to buy some rolls of dimes tomorrow. And take a look at those junk dimes. If you get older Mercury dimes, they're worn out. They're really worn out. Not because they were rare, but because the year subsequent to some of those dimes, they didn't mint that many of them. Yep, just in case we get an EMP. It says, see, that's fine. In fact, if you think about that, the idea that there might be an EMP or financial crisis does put a premium on certain types of silver. But that's it. The premium is already baked in. If that premium was so valued by the market, you'd have to pay like 3 times the price for physical silver today. You don't. You can complain all you want about manipulation and COMEX and criminals and banksters. Fine. Then that would mean that you should be happy you can buy silver at the current physical price. They've knocked the physical price down, so you can buy it. See, manipulation, I'm not saying there's not manipulation, but what I'm saying is it gets to a point. If there really is a premium on barter silver, they couldn't knock it down that much because people would want to pay more to have it for insurance. And you can say, well, other people are stupid. They are sheeple. They don't understand. Well, that's not true. That's not true at all. People buy insurance for everything. The market is not valuing that risk very highly. They are valuing the fact that they may get into a car accident, they may get sick and need an operation, their house might be burned down. They're not as concerned about the need to have barter silver. It's just a fact. Now, that may be dumb, and there are a lot of people you would say, well, that would mean that insurance is on sale today. Well, that's possible. But then it's been on sale for 10 years. That's my point. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to have silver. I'm just saying that these pump stories that somehow they've overhyped the value of silver to ridiculous levels. Silver is rarer than gold. We could not lead our lives without silver. Yeah, and you can't lead your life without copper and zinc and aluminum and so on. It's just how much of it there is and how much is needed. Yep, Rares Barry, you got the question right. 1922. There is no 1922 dimes, quarters, or half dollars. All right, Fiona's talking about, she works in Manhattan. Very nice. Where's Barry? What about proofs? Nope, there were no. You know what? I doubt it. Let me just check for you. That's a good question. Oh. 1922 dimes. No, they didn't make anything. They made no coins in 1922. I doubt they would bother to make dimes and quarters and proof. Yes, okay. Silver stacker. There are a lot of women, sexist talk, that like silver jewelry. So maybe women are buying more silver jewelry, but we're not aware of it. But we're not aware of all of it. That's true. Yep. We're going cashless. See, that's the thing. If anyone's paying attention, instead of sticking to like an old narrative, the world always returns to gold. The world always returns to silver. That's what Mike Maloney always says. Not necessarily. That's like saying the world always returns to horses after a car accident. Horses are transportation for 5,000 years. Horses will always be transportation, period. Gold and silver have been money for 5,000 years. Therefore, gold and silver will do an accounting every so often, and the people will rush back into the metals when the financial system collapses. Maybe not. Maybe they'll go into some other digital illusion of wealth. My money's on that, mentally. It's not my money on it, but I don't see, of the hundreds of millions of people that exist in the world today, that think that gold and silver should be part of the monetary system. Well, the only people who think that are the people who watch YouTube channels. The people that are in government, they don't think that. But unfortunately, they're the ones who run this stuff. Oh, he's a shill. I'm not shilling anything. I'm just telling you the way I see the world. It's not the way I want to see the world. It's what happens is all the people that are controlling things, that have been educated or miseducated, they don't think in terms of walking around with a bag of silver coins. They don't. They don't think of stacking. They don't buy silver shield rounds with debt and death paradigm on them. That's not mainstream. So you may think it is because maybe you watch all these channels and you think everyone is stacking, and if they're not, they're stupid and they're sheeple. Okay, you can think that, but the world is not valuing the silver and the gold to those levels. And maybe they should, but they don't. That's what this channel is about. It's not about to pump something. Because remember, after 10 years of pumping, if I actually thought that I could have some kind of influence on the way things are in the world, I would do it. I don't. So I analyze. I have 3,800 subscribers. But these other guys, they think they have some kind of influence because they have 200,000 subscribers. They don't. They can say whatever they want about gold and silver and manipulation, and they can invent whatever stories about sovereign size buy and gold back yuan, game changer, according to Mike Maloney. They can make up whatever they want, or they can report on whatever they want. They don't impact the price of gold or silver one bit. They can complain about the Crimex, about the manipulation, about silver shortage. They could talk about JP Morgan's got all the silver. They know. That is such a dumb story the more you think about it. JP Morgan's in the business of making money quarter by quarter. No way do they buy silver at 30, 25, 20 and buy it at a premium by buying coins, then melt it down and just sit on it for years and make no money. Makes no sense whatsoever. And there's no evidence that they're doing it. All right, Seth's on his way out. We lost him. Okay, Seth is gone. You guys are talking about jewelry. Let's see. Eric Schneider. Yeah, they'll come for gold before silver. I think that's true. Again, on the monetary side, they would come for gold. They would come for silver on the commodity side almost definitely before gold. Because silver is useful. They'll come for copper before they come for gold. They'll come for tin, aluminum, the bumper of your car before they come for gold. And they'll come for silver for that reason too. I'm not saying they will come for it, but gold doesn't have the same... There's never been a commodity shortage for gold. Oh, Pablo's here. Welcoming the game changers. What about the mug stackers? All right. Let's see if we got anything else. Well, I read in Russia they still have laws where people can't own gold. Yeah, Silverstein. They had law in the United States from 1934 to 1974. 33 to 1974, you couldn't own gold. That does happen. Where's Barry? Ann, didn't you mention double cells being a problem? Sal had a video about cryptos being hacked more and more. I got to go and listen to what Sal's talking about. Sal's not a crypto guy, so I'm not sure he's up to speed on what happened. He probably read the article to you. I don't know, but I haven't read the article. We'll have to... We'll cover that tomorrow night. We're going to get the news tomorrow. We'll cover an update on gold, silver. There's some political news, too, we probably have to cover. So I'll make sure I read that article on hacking crypto. Yeah, Ann says, it seems to me if there was an EMP, food and water would have the most value. Yeah. Seeds, things like that. All right. What else? Silver Wolverine is here. You got to check out Silver Wolverine's channel. It's a great channel. Get to see some real live silver there. All right. Yep, Philip likes this channel too. Very good channel. De La Villa's a bag of dimes. She paid 8 large for it 10 years ago. I wonder what... how many are in a bag of dimes? Yeah. I think they come in face value, $10, $100, so on. All right, everyone. I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and we will see you tomorrow night, and we'll get back on track with the gold, silver, and economic stories and the news of the day. So thank you very much for joining me, and we will see you tomorrow. Unless I get any comments in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a good night.